Jr. Mr. Cormier, you have a minute and a half. Go ahead.
So there are a million things that I could say about last week's meeting, but I'll start with the fact that Revis and a few other council members, the whole council basically, calls the motion by Hampton performative and symbolic. There's nothing symbolic or performative about the suffering of Black people. As you know, Anthony McLean was murdered, and there is no waiting for the facts. That is a fact. He's dead. So is his grandmother. She died of grief. That's not performative. That's for real. And that is real suffering, real pain that has been caused. And you guys do anything to protect the cops, but not the community. You are more concerned with Edwin Dumagwen's job than you were with Anthony McLean's life. You're more concerned with Edwin Dumagwen's job than the fact that his grandmother died of grief. You're more concerned with his job than you are the fact that children of him can no longer hug, kiss, see, or hang out with him ever again. You're more concerned with his job than you are with the community members who had to see a Black man who looks just like them be murdered in the street, handcuffed, knelt on, and have a bullet pass through his chest and hit a house on the other side of the street. That's more concerning to you. Now, while Gordo rails against people who are quote unquote out of towners, how many Pasadena police officers actually don't live in Pasadena? That means we're paying officers such as Edwin Dumagwendon who live out of town to come into Pasadena.
Mr. Cormier Jr.,
our own money to torture and kill people.
Your time has expired.
Fire the cop.
Brittany Pollock, followed by Jason R., followed by Michael Williams, who has not yet checked into the meeting, followed by Lucia P.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I'm gonna just actually pick up where the last speaker left off, talking about police officers that don't even live in Pasadena. So we are hiring folks who don't live from out of town to come and violently either kill community members or continue to harass them. I am calling, like many others do every single week, to demand the firing of all the Pasadena police officers who played a part in Anthony McLean's murder in August of 2020. We're now talking about a murder that happened a year and a half ago that you all have not done anything about. We are here to demand accountability in every sense of that word. You all need to do your job. You want to push this off like you don't have the responsibility to do anything? Do something. The public comes here and calls in every single week about this egregious stealing of life, and you all don't care because this is a Black community member. If this was a white community member, you would all be doing something different. This kind of approach to human life truly dehumanizes you. You all are just taking this not seriously. Someone was murdered. Somebody who you employ was murdered.
Ms. Pollock.
You are all complicit in this. For letting
your time has expired, Ms. Pollock. Thank you.
The officers, they're not even fired? This is ridiculous.
All right, we'll move on to the next speaker is Jason R., followed by Michael Williams, who's not yet checked in, followed by Lucia P.
Hello.
1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
All right, so Pasadena City cowards. I'm back again to call for the firing of the officers who murdered Anthony McLean, Edwin Dumagwendon, who shot Anthony in the back, and Ronald Serena, who knelt on Anthony's back to speed out the bleeding. We know that the former chief of the Pasadena Pig Department, John Perez, supported the actions taken by Edwin Dumagwendon that night, even though they were in direct violation of his own department's policies. We know that the city supported the actions taken by Edwin Dumagwendon that night because he's still on your payroll, he's still on duty, he's still in our streets, and there was no form of discipline or accountability when it came to Edwin's actions that night. We know that Perez was pushing a narrative that didn't reflect what really happened on the ground that night, and y'all just let him return. But remember, it's election season, and I have faith that the inner dealings of this department will soon be unearthed. Perez left as part of a PR move by the city to release the pressure that has been amplified over the last 12 months in regards to the murder of Anthony McLean. John Kennedy, you were forwarded a toolkit calling for justice in the name of Anthony McLean by the former city manager, Steve Mermel, where the subject line read, "The trash never rests." John Kennedy, for the record, do you think Anthony McLean is trash? Fuck y'all.
Ask speakers to direct their
excuse
comments
me.
to the body as a whole,
Normally-
not to
Excuse
the
me, normally I
individual
don't
members.
respond, but I'm not aware of anything related to what the last speaker said, referring to an esteemed member of our community being referenced as trash. Certainly, young man who lost his life has value like any other member of our community. So yes, I hold him in high esteem. I hold his family in high esteem. His relatives are my good friends. And I am hoping, just like I think all of my colleagues on the council, for the district attorney to respond and do his job. I'm also hoping that there will be a complete administrative review. And to answer the question, Anthony McLean is a human being and he deserves the utmost respect, and his family deserves answers that I am hoping, as one member of the council, are forthcoming.
Next speaker.
Lucia P, followed by Janae Lennox. Michael Williams has not checked in, followed by Julia R, who has not checked in, followed by Karina K. Mr. Madison has joined us.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, it's true. Anthony McLean absolutely was a human being. And the fact that this body has not done anything to create accountability or demand real justice for him is a travesty. He was murdered a year and a half ago, and we have yet to see anything resembling justice. In fact, what we've seen is the city council and the mayor double down on their support of and funding for Pasadena Police Department while continuing to ignore our demands for accountability. You all of you here on this meeting are complicit in the cover-up of Anthony McLean's murder. That cover-up started with PPD tampering with witness statements, with the city attorneys and city managers' intimidation tactics, and continues today and every day that officers to McGuindon and Sereno remain employed by Pasadena Police Department and with salaries paid for by the Black community members of Pasadena who PPD terrorizes daily. We are tired of you all pretending that you don't have the power and influence to make sure that these officers are fired. We're tired of the condescension of this body toward community members demanding accountability week after week. Justice for Anthony McLean, say his name. I yield my time.
Thank you. Janae Lennox, followed by Julia R, who's not yet checked in, followed by Karina K and Julia Martinez.
For the umpteenth time, as you can hear, the community is consistent. Our demands are very clear, not complex. It doesn't need a rocket science to understand it. We are demanding accountability. We are demanding the firing of the officers that were involved in all the contributory factors that were involved in the cover-up of Anthony McLean. This isn't something that you could pass on to someone else. It's a firing. Literally heard another council member try to pass the buck on his own accountability. This is y'all. You guys can absolutely fire members of the community that clearly cannot do their job. It's clear. When you murder someone, when they're running away, you clearly cannot do your job. When you kneel on them, making sure they bleed the hell out, you clearly are malicious and clearly need to be fired. You are unsafe for the community. You are unsafe for the community. That should also alarm you, each and every one of you that are part of the community. your families are part of the community. So if you allow someone to just basically run rogue, best believe that your family could be absolutely affected by these people that you can, for some reason, are trying to avoid accountability of. This doesn't make any sense. And every single week, the pressure has been consistent. So figure it out. But there is
Miss
absolutely a way for you guys to fire
Lennox, your time has expired.
the officers, period.
We're going to call Michael Williams, who's in the meeting, followed by Julia R., who's not yet in the meeting, then Karina K. Mr. Williams, go ahead.
Yes, it's getting really old, you know, like the constant trying to deflect blame, trying to deflect the accountability away from the council, when everything you guys have said to deflect blame has been dissuaded, been disproved, been debunked over and over again. Stop trying to put it on the district attorney. The district attorney deals with criminal charges. You all deal with administrative things. You have control over the city manager, which means you have control over what the city manager does. If you recommend something to the city manager, especially something that concerns the death of a young man named Anthony McLean by the hands of the police, that means that you could fire them if they do not make that recommendation a reality. So stop this. We're going to wait for this person and that person to do something. You all have the power to do something now, but you're refusing to do it because you want that good union, police union money. If that's not true, then prove me wrong. Make a statement. Push for those officers to be fired. It shouldn't, I mean, I don't know what day and age you live in when a video can show a young man being shot in the back and city council members say, we need more evidence to see whether or not this young man should have, whether or not the officers should be fired for that.
Mr.
It's
Williams, your
ridiculous.
time has expired.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Fire the officers that killed Anthony McLean, period.
Julia R. has not checked into the meeting. We'll move on to Karina K. Oh, she just checked in. Julia R. *6 to unmute, Julia. Let's bring in Karina K, and then we'll try Julia R. one more time.
Can you hear me?
We can. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
My name's Karina. I'm a Pasadena resident and a member of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, calling in yet again to raise the demands to fire Edwin Dumagrinden, Ronald Serrano, and every other officer who contributed to the death and the cover-up of Anthony McLean. Last week, you all didn't think that it was right or suitable to put an end to this, to bring about a policy that won't have us, you know, a year and some change later after a man is murdered and your employees, your city employees are still on the payroll. We don't want more Edwin Dumagwindens, and we don't want more Ronald Serranos. Why are they employed to shoot people in the back? Why are they employed to kneel on people's backs and kill them? Like that, really, like if your jobs are only administrative, you are enabling that destructive, murderous behavior. That's not public safety. Like, why do we have to explain this to you? Why did you all not act last week? Why did you all not bring about accountability? When someone kills someone, we're saying that you need to say that that is wrong. You need to say that that is not going to continue, but instead you've done the opposite. So we're going to be here. We're going to be here. We demand that they are fired. We don't want you to sit here and do nothing and continue deflecting on the stuff that you can do. You can fire those officers. You can don't sit here and say that you can't. So I mean, as long as you guys keep doing the same thing, we're going to keep saying.
Karina, your time has
demand
expired.
that there be justice and accountability, justice for Anthony McLean.
Thank you. Julia R. *6 to unmute, Julia. Okay, we're going to move on to Julie Martinez, followed by Kat Ross, followed by Carolyn Galoni.
Good
Miss-
evening.
Good
Thank you
evening.
for this opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I always put in the topic that I'm speaking on public safety because I feel that the Pasadena Police Department do pose a danger to the community. It is high time that the officers that killed Anthony McLean are fired. There is no excuse for that. The entire nation's eyes are upon Pasadena and other cities. Many cities have already begun to explore ways to change how policing is done in our communities. And I'm always confused as why the Pasadena City Council and the mayor are not directly involved. I did attend last week's meeting, so I do understand, and I did understand the definition of what you can and cannot do. You can take much more bolder steps and make sure that the killers of Anthony McLean are held accountable and are no longer policing the streets of Pasadena. If I have some chance, I have a few minutes. If I have a few more seconds, I want to say that unfortunately, Pasadena continues to employ the LA County Sheriff for the Pasadena Rose Bowl and provides them with a sizable amount of money. The Sheriff Department is the most dangerous Sheriff Department in the entire nation. They have 3 investigations. One, the FBI.
Ms. Martinez, your time has expired.
Please do not reignite that contract with the sheriffs for the Pasadena Rose Bowl next year. You have plenty of time to
Thank you.
plan. Thank you.
Julia R., I believe, is now available. Try her one more time. Julia, *6 to unmute. I was told by staff that you're available. There you go. All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead. 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I want you to just take a moment and let the weight of every week that we've called in to talk about Anthony McLean, the murder of Anthony McLean, one of your citizens in your town, I want you to let that sit in, just how long we have been here talking to you, trying to reach you and get you to understand that we are not messing around. We will not wait around for this to happen again. It has been years now, years, and we still have 2 murderers employed for the murdering of a father. This is unbelievable. It has got to end. You can do far more than this. This is what literally what politics is. You make these things happen. You listen to the people in your community. That is who has asked you to lead them. How many more times do we have to fill up the entire general comments about Anthony McLean? How many more times do we have to do it? We will not tire of this. I promise you that. We will be here every single week until we see movement. Because, my friends, we know so deeply how little words mean, right? It is only about actions here.
Julia, your time has expired.
Until we see some actual change, it does not matter
Thank you.
what you say. It does not matter.
Kat Ross, followed by Carolyn Galoni. Ms. Ross, go ahead.
I'm pretty disappointed by last week, I have to say. I think changing the policy from tolling to not tolling is kind of the most minimal possible change the city could make. And it still wasn't done. As far as I can tell, it seems the chief is the only person who holds the police accountable, and she is the police. She has no incentive to hold the officers accountable. In fact, she has every incentive to make sure they stay employed. The city manager reviews the chief, but doesn't seem to do that in any substantive way, in any way that reflects whether or not the chief is holding officers accountable for keeping residents safe. Certainly shootings
someone in the back is not keeping them safe, nor is it keeping anyone else safe. In fact, we feel terrified by the police, not safer when they shoot people in the back. Stop polling, fire the officers. Share how you're going to vet the city manager, the new city manager. What questions will be asked? We want to know if that city manager is going to hold the chief accountable.
Ms. Ross, your
Hire
time
a
has
chief-
expired. Carolyn Galoni will be the last speaker on matters not on the agenda.
Hi, yes, I again want to call pleading to you like every other caller that you take action. Like, stop saying that you are powerless. The only reason you guys are impotent is because you're not willing to use your political sway to make this change. I mean, you could go make public statements. I have heard Hampton do that. Thank you for that. But there's more. All of you could make a public statement. You guys could also indeed hire a city manager who doesn't think police unions are the greatest thing in the world, and who in fact opposes police unions, who wants there to be in-depth quick reviews and doesn't want the police reviewing themselves, because goodness, that's not leading our city or our country. It doesn't make any sense. We have found over and over again that their policing themselves is really just letting themselves go. You guys can also go ahead, align yourselves with BLM, go to the events, go to the meetings, sit with the truth that police officers in our city are harassing activists, murdering our Black community members. Indeed, go to the meetings, align with them, speak up, tell people, hey, I 100% support this, or I 100% agree, we can't have this anymore. It is just, if you want to build a relationship of trust, then stop sending the murder cops and pay them to harass
Ms. Galoni,
activists.
your time has expired.
It's super insulting that we in Pasadena and
Thank you.
other people in Pasadena are paying for these
Mayor,
salaries.
council, that completes public comment on matters not on the agenda.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to announce that item 8 has been pulled from the agenda. So if you are waiting to speak on item 8, the first reading of the Lincoln Avenue specific plan, please know that that matter has been pulled and will be posted for a later meeting. Next, we'll move on to the consent calendar. And do we have any?
We have one speaker on items 2 and 5.
Okay, so we'll take this. We'll take a sweep motion on everything but items 2 and 5.
So moved, Mayor.
Been moved in. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The entire consent calendar except for items 2 and 5. Roll call.
Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yeah.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Motion is approved without opposition.
And with regard to public comment, there's one speaker for items 2 and 5. Mr. Clerk.
Brittany Pollock.
Hi, yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
So for item 5, I don't understand how you all are not meeting in person if schools are in session and you are forcing all other people to meet in person. It also came out that California is going to be lifting mask mandates. So I don't know why you all are avoiding the public, probably out of convenience for you, but that needs to end. If schools are in session and you're forcing kids to be around hundreds of other kids a day, please open up the session, open up to the public, actually take our comments. I'd also like to comment on 2, which in this agenda item, you talk about public safety. And in public safety, all you talk about is getting federal assistance to local police, which the community has already talked about. The police do not need more funds. Why on earth Are you all listening to this at all? Why on earth would you increase federal resources for law enforcement? For them to recruit, for them to train? What, for them to train more murderers to shoot people in the back? Shoot Black citizens in the back? We need to stop funding law enforcement, put that money into the community, into actual public safety initiatives, maybe education, maybe housing, maybe food security. There are tons of other things you all could be spending this money on, and you're choosing to define public safety attached with law enforcement.
Ms. Pollock,
There
your
must be
your time has
something else
expired.
going on here. Who is paying you all?
Thank
What's
you.
all going on?
Okay, that completes public comment, and I'll entertain a motion on items 2 and 5.
Move items 2 and 5. Mayor, thanks.
Moved by Ms. Williams. Is
I
there?
would like to separate item 2 and 5, if that's fine with you, Mayor.
Sure.
I had comments on item 5 myself.
So let's go to item 2. Ms. Williams, do you move item 2?
So moved, item 2.
Second.
Roll call.
So for staff recommendation to approve item 2, Councilmember Hampton? I think that was a yes. Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
Item 2 is approved.
With regard to item 5, Mr. Hampton, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think at this point, there is been a lot of conversation about this being an endemic, and one of the public speakers brought up a great point that I was going to mention. Schools are back in session. You could go and eat inside of a restaurant, et cetera. I think that we are out of an emergency, and the fact that we are saying it's an emergency because it's going to mess up our federal dollars, or whatever our funding source for the city, it's been extremely detrimental to our business community. It's been extremely detrimental to our children and our schools. And I think that we are no longer in an emergency. And this is just me speaking. And so I can't support this because, this is an endemic. COVID is going to be with us forever. And I think we have to figure out ways to navigate and deal with that. And we need to create policies based around that versus the fear that we have been under for the past 2 years dealing with this. So I will not be able to support this motion. And I think that we should end all of our emergency declarations at our next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. And just for the record, so the public understands, this is simply to allow us to conduct virtual meetings so the public can participate. Councilmember Williams.
I get that. No, I was just talking about
Yeah.
I was saying the thing
Councilmember Williams
in its entirety
are both present in the chambers together with the city manager and the city attorney, the city clerk, and other staff.
And others can show up too.
So is there a motion on item 5?
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
To approve item number 5, staff recommendation, Councilmember Hampton? No. Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The motion is approved, 7 in favor, 1 against.
So that brings us to item 7. This is a public hearing on the call for review of the Planning Commission's decision on CUP number 6918 regarding the property located at 758, 766 South Fair Oaks, Huntington Hospital. Mr. Clerk, you want to open the public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the time and place for the call for review public hearing of the Planning Commission's decision on conditional use permit number 6918 regarding the property located at 758 and 766 South Fair Oaks Avenue, the Huntington Hospital. On January 24th, 2022, 56 notices, copies of the public hearing notice were posted, 68 copies of the public hearing notice were mailed. The city clerk's office received 3 letters in support of the modification and or the Huntington Hospital proposed project, also providing comments related to the design of the building. The 3 letters were posted online, distributed to the city council, and are part of the public hearing record for this item.
I see a couple of hands up. Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes, Mayor, as you may recall, when this came up as a call for review, I had to recuse myself as my wife's law firm does work for the Huntington. So I will stick with that practice and I'm not participating in this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And so we'll excuse you from the meeting. Mr. Madison's hands up.
Yes,
Mr. Madison.
thank you, Mayor. The council will recall, as reflected in the staff report, that I did ask my colleagues to call this up. And it appears to me from the record now before us that the process worked and that we have a project that we should be ready to approve tonight, and that all of the stakeholders' concerns have been adequately addressed. I guess I would just inquire of the city clerk. I can see the applicant and its representatives here. Is there any comment, requests for public comment from any non-stakeholders?
Councilmember Madison, we have a few public comment cards that have been submitted on this item.
Yes, but I'm asking, apart from the applicant and its representatives, are there any residents, for example?
The names, and I'm not sure, so forgive me, I don't know if everybody who's all associated, but Kelly Holmes, Betsy Nathane, Nina Chomsky, Erica Foy have all submitted cards.
And I believe those are all community representatives. So, I will expect that I'll be prepared to move that we adopt the staff recommendation, but perhaps, Mayor, we could just hear the public comment first and then see if it's necessary for staff or the applicant to present.
That sounds fine. This matter's received quite a bit of hearing. I'm told that many of the issues have been worked through, as you suggest, Mr. Madison. Let's.
Yeah, we have a substantial written record before us as well. So,
Mr. Masuda.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Madison, for speaking first. Mayor, I'll be prepared to second Mr. Madison's motion. I'd like to find out, though, is David there?
Yes.
I don't see him. David, what were the changes?
Mr. Masuda, before we proceed to that, let me just state for the record that I did visit the site and personally, and the city attorneys advised that I put that in the record, and anyone else who also visited the site should do the same. Thank you.
Would you like me to address that?
Yeah, why don't you go through the changes, then we'll go to public comment.
Sure, I can do that without the presentation. If there's a presentation needed, we can provide that. In brief, Mayor and Councilmember Masuda, the project was changed to address Planning Commission and community concerns regarding 3 areas. One was the design of the courtyard. It was sunken, it had steps. It was really not accessible from a public perspective in terms of pedestrians. So that's been changed and addressed to ensure that the courtyard is no longer sunken and is at the same grade level as the sidewalk. In addition, and this was a major issue for the commission and the public, there were 3 curb cuts essentially associated with this project. So 3 different driveway access points that were creating some pedestrian vehicle conflicts. And in its close relation to the Gold Line, it was really, there was a big push from the community to reduce the number of curb cuts. So the project's been changed. There's only 1 driveway entrance into the project now. So that's a substantial change that we are prepared to show if requested. And then the third one was the pedestrian feeling along both Fair Oaks and I apologize, the cross street is completely eluding me now. On Fairmount, excuse me. No, on Fairmount. This page.
Fillmore
I'm sorry,
Street.
Fillmore, not Fairmount, but Fillmore. Thank you. And the point there was really important. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. On Fillmore, there was 2 rows of trees that have been proposed to be planted by the applicant and creating a nice alley with respect to the pedestrian passageway. That combined with the reduced curb cuts creates a much better pedestrian environment to the Gold Line and allows folks to be able to walk across the street both directions. The sidewalk has also been proposed to be widened, and those are really the 3 main components of design changes and that are in direct response to both community concerns as well as the Planning Commission. Councilmember Masuda.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Masuda, and welcome to Dr. Morgan, who's joined us at the meeting together with her team. Let's turn to public comment. This is an important project in our city, obviously an important project for the hospital and for healthcare in the city and beyond. Okay.
So Kelly Holmes would be the first person to get called, and then Betsy Nathane, followed by Nina Chomsky, followed by Erica Foy. Ms. Holmes, could you unmute your display and begin your public comment? I don't think is it *6? I don't think so because I don't see the. We'll go to the next speaker. It's Betsy Nathane. Ms. Nathane?
Hold it.
There you
Right.
go. Go ahead. You
Mayor
have 1
Gordon-
minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, 2 minutes. Sorry.
2 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Gordo, council members. I am Betsy Nathane, and I'm speaking as an individual here, but I am the chair of the Urban Forestry Advisory Committee, and we're commonly known as UFAC. This project raises urban forestry issues that have concerned myself and others for some time. How can private developers, planning, design, public works, UFAC, specific plans, and the public all interact for the benefit of our public and private trees? Now there is little or no coordination between these groups, and the situation needs to change. This project is a good example of what is right and what is wrong with the current administration of our urban forests. Thank you, Huntington Hospital, for meeting with the interested members of the public and for making the great changes and improvements to the trees on site, and to both the public and private trees on Fillmore, stressing the canopy shade trees, which are so important in Pasadena. But why was there no path for UFAC, Public Works, Planning, or Design to play a regular role in this process? The public will not be there all the time to push developers and the city to improve our public and private urban forests. And what about South Fair Oaks? Crepe myrtles are the designated street tree in our master plan, but they are the wrong tree for this project. And South Fair Oaks needs canopy shade trees, just like Fillmore. I understand that this was brought up in the meetings with the public and addressed. UFAC has a process for changing street trees. So when and how can UFAC become involved in determining the right street tree for South Fair Oaks and changing the draft plan? Please give attention to improving please give attention to improving our urban forestry in administrating it correctly in the city.
Ms. Nathane.
UPAC is ready to play UPAC is ready to play an earlier, bigger, and better role in planning and developing the process.
Ms. Nathane, your time has expired.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nathane. Next speaker.
Let's bring in Nina Chomsky, followed by Erica Foy, followed by Kelly Holmes.
Ms. Chomsky?
Nina, need to unmute your display.
*6.
It's not. She's not on the phone.
Let's go to,
Nina,
go to Ms. Foy, come back to the chance.
Let's go to Erica Foy.
Ms. Foy?
There you go. 2 minutes, go
Good
ahead.
evening. Thanks. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Madison Heights is pleased to support this project. President John Latta and I enjoyed meeting with the hospital and being able to express our concerns about trees, sidewalks, traffic, walkability, and open space. The hospital could not have been more gracious and receptive to our comments. It was nice to hear the hospitals learn to express their feeling that our participation actually made a better project. We are really excited about the additional trees, the reduction of curb cuts, and the wider sidewalks. We really want to stress to the city how important this area is the Fillmore area and how it offers a blank slate for the creation of a new part for our city. Keeping Fillmore as unique and a pleasant walking area for hospital employees, art students, and residents in our neighborhood is utmost importance. We are anxious to use the planning tools available to our city to create something very special for this area, and that includes new housing, park space, bike lanes, and tree-lined sidewalks. I believe by coming together, we can create this vision in a way that will set precedents not only for our regional area, but for the nation. That being said, now that I'm speaking on my own account, I am still frustrated by the traffic issue. My concern has nothing to do with Huntington Hospital's actions, but the need for our transportation outside CEQA studies to be drastically updated. Fortunately, relief is on the way because you will be hearing about the LLG report very soon. I am concerned that your staff report on this project say they recalculated the traffic numbers without the trip credit, but it's nowhere to be found. I actually have asked for the report in the public record request form with no response. This data is important because if we are going to keep our city moving, try to mitigate failing intersections, and ensure ambulances can access the hospital, this data must be front and center. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Foy. We'll try Kelly Holmes and then Nina Chomsky. Kelly, sorry, I was waiting for, Kelly, can you unmute your display? There should be a little icon that has a microphone to unmute. Okay, we can go to Nina Chomsky. Nina, are you there? There you
Yes,
go.
I think you can. Yes, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, go ahead.
The tree situation with our public meetings was best part of our public meetings, I think. And I think we are doing something that's fantastic on Fillmore, and I think we're doing something fantastic in the plaza. Now, we spent all day today clarifying that the trees on Fillmore, on private property, the Huntington property, and in the plaza will be in tree wells. And there are supposed to be changes that are being suggested to condition 15 and maybe another condition of approval. So before you vote on this, perhaps the staff can provide what the changes are, and maybe you have them in front of you. I also want to personally support the suggested change to condition 1 from Pasadena Heritage, which is very important. We have a situation here where the building is still controversial. It's now going to go to the design commission if you approve this with the massing and the footprint set, and the design commission plans will be hobbled about what it can do to improve the building and make it a better Pasadena building. But the suggested new language from Pasadena Heritage to endorse any changes that the design commission possibly can make will be reflected in the design and in the approval. And I think that's important. But most important to me is the clarification of the tree well situation for these. And this is a model for future interaction between private development, private shade, canopy shade trees, and public trees on the streets. And yes, we must change the street tree on Fair Oaks, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
And as soon as public comment is completed, we'll turn to Mr. Reyes for 3 slides that will outline the changes.
We could try Kelly Holmes one more time. That's the last speaker on this item. Kelly, There we
Hi.
go. Third time's
All
the
right,
charm.
thank you.
There we
So
go.
sorry to
That's
everybody.
okay.
And I appreciate you coming back to me. So really quickly, I'm the lucky, and I mean that sincerely, person who is the Pasadena Beautiful Foundation's representative on the Urban Forestry Advisory Committee. This is my second time on the committee, and I am so grateful to be back on it because I've seen the changes in our city. I've seen what it's done to our trees, and it's an understatement to say I'm worried. Y'all have heard me say this before. I grew up in Anaheim. I've been here 30 years. This is my hometown. I only lived in Anaheim for 18. I've seen Orange County bulldozed and replaced at will. I don't want to see that anymore in Pasadena. Today, I was on Walnut driving west, and there's a giant, I know you know this data, this project on the north side of Walnut. It closes down the north street headed west because of its size for the safety of its construction. It's another project built straight to the edges of the sidewalk. We need to pull back and work with the amazing people that are Huntington Hospital representatives, HMRI, the whole crew. Because of what they've done with HMRI on Fair Oak, I know we can, as partners, create a whole new way of doing development in Pasadena. And keep in mind, I represent Pasadena Beautiful Foundation on the commission, but I am speaking as an individual. I really want to see the brilliant minds in construction and engineering come up with a way to allow for a tree well to be as big or bigger than the expected canopy of the shade tree that I'm sure y'all will change to create a new street tree for Fair Oak.
Ms. Holmes, your
We've seen
time
what-
has expired.
Okay, thank you, bye.
Thank you,
That-
Ms. Holmes.
That completes public comment on this item.
Mr. Clerk, are there letters that were submitted in support or in opposition?
Yes, Mayor. I reported out that 3 letters were received, and I think you're asking who sent in the letters.
Right.
One was from Livable Pasadena. One was from Pasadena Heritage that was 2 pages and had a recommendation to modify a condition of approval. And one was from the West Pasadena Residents Association that supports the modifications, but still have concerns about the overall design of the building and are taking no position on the project itself. So those are the 3 letters that have been distributed to the council, are part of the record for this item.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes?
Mayor, thank you. There is, without getting into the entire presentation, there are some changes to the conditions of approval that I'd just like to share with the commission, with the council, and get these into the record. And I think that they're really important. One does speak to what Ms. Chomsky was talking about with respect to the tree wells. And so there would be, this is the second bullet point, modified condition number 15. So it's very important that we would modify condition number 15 so that the trees shown in the plaza shall require proper tree wells based on tree type and shall be shown on the final landscape plan. Those are submitted to the design commission as part of their approval. Every landscape plan does get reviewed. And so what we're saying here is that they must show the tree wells. It's the applicant's intent to have tree wells, and we just want to document and memorialize that they would be required as part of the landscape plan. Going up to the first condition, this is an important issue that the city council has been talking about in other projects. The applicant has agreed to voluntarily enter into the city's first source local hire program. This is a project that does qualify for the voluntary requirements. They're not subject to the first source under our code, but they are voluntarily looking to enter into an agreement with the city manager to start that local hire program. So we're very excited about that. This is the type of project that I think could really benefit from the local hire. The third bullet point down and the fourth bullet point down refer to new conditions of approval based on the revised project that Department of Transportation has initiated regarding the sidewalk widths as well as the alley. So this is something that will improve the project through widened alleys and through widened sidewalks. And those are the conditions that we'd like to add that would modify and augment attachment B of your staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. If we can take the presentation down. Mr. Hampton, did you have a question?
I did. Just very briefly, I want to, touch on the local hire piece. I want to congratulate the Huntington for making those efforts and making sure that we are, or at least they are, investing in our local economy. So thank you so much. And then to David Reyes, and I looked over the local hire piece and it looked really good. So I have no other questions on that. And then to David Reyes, the public speakers had mentioned, how this could be a template for how other projects, the engagement, how Huntington had been extremely open and willing to engage. Is there a way we could try to figure out how to duplicate these efforts so that when developers come into town, they are being extremely engaging as the Huntington has been in this process?
We could start by duplicating Dr. Morgan.
Right, but I'm just wondering, is there anything that we could do? No, I'm wondering, is there anything that we could do from a policy position that says, this is the type of, or this is the type of engagement we're looking for when, you're proposing a project?
Public process with respect to the community. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry, I can't hear anybody.
Mr. Hampton, we're trying to clarify the question. So your question is the procedural question, how we get more applicants to engage in the public engagement process and including local hire, correct?
Not only including local, well.
More broadly than local hire, I should say.
Process, but as well as the process as a whole, because typically what we end up getting is we see large developments come and then, there's, 50 or 40 or 100 residents that are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know anything about this. They weren't really engaging. Our local nonprofit organizations that we all know so well are like, well, we're not a supporter of this project. But in this case today, I mean, I want to say since I've been on the council, this may be one or two of the projects that I've seen that, everybody had something very favorable to say. And so if this is a model, this seems like something we should look at, for any developer coming into town, what our level of expectations are for them.
If I might ask, council member, if we can bifurcate the question or the answer. Nick Rodriguez has been leading, along with Prentice Dietrich, the review of all of our local hiring, our rules, our incentive programs we have for the private sector to get them to enter into the agreement, such as Dr. Morgan has said she would be willing to do for this project. So he might speak to that. And then David Reyes, I think, would be the person to speak to how the community engagement process went and how we got people at the site talking directly to the developer about their concerns. So, can you talk about what you and Prentice are doing?
Okay, I can't hear anybody if you guys are talking.
But we're having a problem getting Nick to a mic here, so let me just go ahead and do it.
Oh, no worries,
Are you,
no worries.
are you got it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're focusing on a number of different areas. The most exciting, we think, is energizing the construction tax rebate for local hire, which specifically rebates a certain percentage of construction tax for hiring of local labor. And if there's no hiring, there's no rebate. We're also looking at the local source hiring agreement. I was not in the discussions today. I believe that we're going to be having something, an agreement with the city with specific goals.
And then if I could just address the second part, Councilmember Hampton, with respect to this being a model for community engagement, and it was, and part of that is, I think someone was joking about having Dr. Morgan and her team. We can't replicate them necessarily, but I think one of the things that came out of it was how important it is to engage the community and have a community meeting with the developer prior to going to public hearing. Because once it goes to public hearing, it's kind of, it's kind of set. The applicant has spent a lot of time and money. And we do in City of Pasadena, we have early check-in points. We have a PPR that's required. We have a preliminary consultation that's required. All of those are with either staff or a commission, and none are with the community. And so I think that one of the things that we'd probably want to do is encourage, whether through code or through policy, early outreach by all projects of a certain size to meet with the community before there's any public participation, before there's any formal public application submitted.
I think that's a good point, and I'm glad. Thank you, Mr. Hampton, for raising it. The PPR process, I remember when we started that years ago, and was intended to allow for the council to give some feedback. Obviously, we can't get too far into the specifics, but I would suggest that we look at some public process before the public hearing stage. And you're right, that's a good suggestion, Mr. Reyes, to have projects of a certain size have the benefit of public input before getting too far down the line on some of these issues that are important to residents and the public.
Thank you. I had just one follow-up from Nick.
Mr. Hampton, and then followed by Mr. Kennedy.
My follow-up for Nick was outside of local hire, when it comes to procurement of goods, is there a percentage for that or any tax initiatives that we could incentivize our developers and anybody doing projects in Pasadena to use local subcontractors or local materials?
On the particular ordinance that we're working with, it's been on the books for a while. It has not been put to the best use, and we're going to be coming back to council sometime soon with a report on that, and probably asking that not only the percentage be increased, which could be done by resolution, to give a greater incentive to the large amount of private construction dollars that are out there, but also adding rebates for local procurement, not just local labor. So it's something we're working on, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. Those are my questions. I appreciate everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. Very productive. Councilmember Kennedy, followed by Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Gordo. First of all, I'd like to say for the record that I did have a conversation with Dr. Lori Morgan, the CEO of Huntington, in reference to this project and staff. Secondly, I'd like to support the spirit and the actual request of Councilmember Hampton as it relates to local hire, local sourcing of materials, and local contracting, not just at this particular project where the developer is Huntington, but all projects in the city over a certain size that actually make sense. It would be lending our ear to staff to bring back recommendations consistent with Nick Rodriguez, the Assistant City Manager, has already shared with us, but a deeper dive where we actually get substantive changes and a sense in the community that this is something that the council believes in, not just one or two or three members of the council, but the council as a whole. And I think that we are there as a council based upon previous actions and requests, whether it be project labor agreements or other activities. I think they're moving away from project labor agreements to something more definitive. Also, I'd like to thank Scott Jenkins specifically, because years ago he involved me on a project called the Montana. and he did not have to do that. And the purpose of that was to get local contractors involved. So as conservative as Han and Han happens to be, Scott Jenkins' heart was in the right place many, many years ago. And I'd like to commend Dr. Morgan for somehow keeping that long relationship with Han and Han going. So to the extent, Scott, that you are willing to play a role in helping us fashion a remedy where we can get more of our local folks engaged, local hiring, local sourcing of materials, and local contracting, I hope that you would feel very comfortable in your senior years to participate. I also would like to say briefly in support of Councilmember Madison's view of this project. I think it's good for our community. I particularly like the comments and disposition of Erica Foy, how she laid out her concerns, objections, and really looking in a way as a pathway forward to benefiting that area of our community and beyond. I think that's the kind of leadership that we hope for all the time. So again, Mayor, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share my brief thoughts. And I'd like to encourage staff to really listen to what Councilmember Hampton has said and my supporting comments that are a little bit more extensive, but certainly in the same direction and vein that Councilmember Hampton has raised for our consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Jenkins, we want you to know those comments were all will be captured in the record, and we're all intended to be complimentary. Next, we'll turn to Ms. Williams.
So I have a procedural question. Sorry, are we asking questions? Deliberating?
We're asking questions at the moment, or making comments.
Okay, or me. Okay.
Either one.
Because I have questions and I have comments.
Okay, why don't you ask your questions and then.
Okay, so the question that I have, yes, I'm going to go there to the traffic impact analysis, which I think nobody wants to talk about. And we're going to, Andy, Jess, Tyrone, and I can really get into the meat of this discussion more tomorrow, because that's on the agenda for MSC. But I just wanted to, so Huntington Hospital has a transportation demand management plan. So just wanted to verify that with DOT. And they do have, what's really good about them is they probably have a breakdown of mode share. And so I wanted to understand when we look at, and this gets into sort of regional and state issues too, but when we look at Huntington, how many of their employees ride the Gold Line and what incentive, or the L line or whatever it's called, with the artist formerly known as the Gold Line. So, so what percentage of their employees ride the Metro? And then how can we use that sort of reality to do traffic impact analysis for proposed projects like this? So if 20% of the people at Huntington, the employees, are riding the Gold Line, can we apply that 20% to this new building as opposed to using SCAG or other assumptions and metrics? It'd be nice to sort of do these things on more of a Pasadena level. And since we have those comps there, just wanted to understand how that process works, how are the assumptions used, and the trip credits compared to the reality of what Huntington is doing with their employees.
Right. So this is Laura Cornejo, Director of Transportation. One of the requirements of the development is that they do develop a TDM plan, a Transportation Demand Management Plan. That needs to be on file by the time they pull their occupancy permit, if I recall correctly. So I'm not sure that we have a TDM plan on file yet, but they are required to provide one. Part of that is to engage the local residents and finding those solutions as they develop the TDM plan. In terms of kind of mode split and trip generation, we don't split it up into these are employees and these are visitors. What we do is kind of all trips. And so we have a breakdown that says that approximately about 11% of all trips will be conducted by rail. We also break it down by foot, by bike, and by vehicle. But based on our analysis, it looks at about 11% would be arriving by rail.
And is that 11% transit mode share? Is that high for an employer in Pasadena?
You know, I wouldn't be able to measure it against other employers. I would say anything above a 10% is good. Obviously, we would like to get higher than that. Kind of based on the mode split, I think the number of people driving to this facility is still too high, but anything where we could start to move the needle. Again, it shows 11%, but rail, we have about another 1% by bus. And the more we provide efficient transit service, the more likely people are to take it. So that's the ultimate goal.
Thank you. So it would be great to see Huntington sort of work with their campus and their building to get, because I think that's a pretty high mode share for transit. So whatever they're doing at the hospital, I hope the same programs can be implemented at the building and try to get an even higher mode share, because it is closer to the L line. And hopefully with all these improvements along Fillmore, that will be a much nicer walk.
Correct. And that is part of the goal of a TDM plan, which they are required to provide an annual report on, and we do monitor.
Great. Thank you. So my general comments when we get to the comments section, overall, I support the project. I'm glad that they talked with the community. I was concerned initially when they came out of the Planning Commission, but it looks like a lot of those issues have been addressed. I do have a position on whether or not we should amend Condition 1 for the Design Commission, and I think that's a longer term issue that we need to look at, that once the Planning Commission or the City Council sets the envelope, there's very little the Design Commission can do. And so many members of the public get to the Design Commission thinking that certain things can change and they can't. So I think that's always been sort of a chicken and egg problem that we have in the city, and any way we could resolve that would be great. There's also an issue of local control here. I think that the categorical exemption from the state, the trouble with this, I'm going to support the project, but the trouble that I have is I cannot make findings 4 and 5 and say that this project does not have a negative impact on the welfare of Pasadenans if we haven't done the environmental analysis, and we haven't, because the state basically says we can't. So it's a very awkward position to be in. It's not, a fault of Huntington Hospital, but there seems to be a mismatch between what the state is encouraging and how we are supposed to evaluate our projects. And so I think in the future, we probably need to look at that, because we can't say there's no impacts if we don't know. The next thing is the traffic impact analysis, which I'll reserve for tomorrow's conversation. And I'm also in the camp with Council Members Kennedy and Hampton. I sent my questions earlier and asked if First Source could be applied to this project, because I think with all the development in Pasadena, I think we do need to look longer term at a community benefits agreement and a citywide project labor agreement. The people who build that building should be able to afford to see the doctors in that building. The people who work there should be able to afford to see the doctors in that building. And we as a city council can help with that. The county has done a lot of work on this. They have a countywide PLA. They also have First Source and local hiring, and they also have a community benefits agreement. So we have other entities, and it'd be great to sort of look at what they have and at some point bring that to council to see what we could do to try to help our citizens, our residents benefit from these projects that are happening, and it kind of balances out the traffic impact that we kind of know is there. That's a little bit hidden, but it balances out when the community benefits more from these projects. Thanks.
The community benefits agreement has been very successful in other communities, and we've seen what happens when we don't have one in place with other projects who've now come back for second phases and agreed to engage in a community benefits agreement. So it is something maybe we can send to EdTech to be looked at carefully. I think, Mr. Madison?
I think that's all the hands, correct, Mayor? And I mean, I suppose on the environmental piece, just before I move to close the public hearing, I think we can make findings 4 and 5, but my reading of the staff report is that we've considered air quality, transportation impact on the surrounding area. You know, I too have spoken to Dr. Morgan and her representatives. I too have been out to this site. I mean, there is, you know, blight not far from this site. So I'm struggling with the notion that this won't be a huge improvement to the community. And I do think that those findings have been supported. But I don't know if Mr. Reyes or the city manager want to address that or not.
Mr. Reyes?
I think the assertion is that if a full environmental impact report isn't done, somehow our body can't make the findings required. And that's just contrary to CEQA, as I understand.
Mr. Reyes?
And to common sense.
Yes, I think both council members are correct. We are bound by CEQA, and in this case, the project does qualify for a Class 32 infill exemption. Air quality, noise, traffic, and other factors were considered, were studied, and were analyzed, and the project did not result in any impacts in those areas, and therefore no further environmental review was required by the project. So there was appropriate level required as is required by the California Environmental Quality Act, but nothing further than a Class 32 infill exemption.
And I'd like to offer my rebuttal to Councilmember Madison, if I can. Because I think you're addressing, so if you actually look at the traffic impact analysis and the outside CEQA analysis, our thresholds are so unrealistic because we are how we are supposed to do them by the state. Yes, we did the analysis, but our thresholds would basically allow King Kong to go over there and have no impacts. So that's the, we're bound because we have to use certain guidelines and thresholds and assumptions that I don't think are appropriate for Pasadena. And so that's sort of the hand tying. And so I think we see it in different ways based on the analysis that was done. You can make the findings 4 and 5 based on the assumptions that were used. I have difficulty making those. So that's the difference.
So, Mayor, I don't know if Mr. Jenkins wants to respond to the backhanded compliment about his age from Mr. Kennedy.
We'll turn to the senior in the room.
But at the appropriate time, I'm prepared to move to close the public hearing and then move the staff recommendation. And I certainly share the commitment to local hire that my colleagues are articulated.
Okay, so matter's been moved and seconded.
Mr. Jenkins, did you want to say anything before we close the public hearing? Now's your chance.
I appreciate some of the comments, and I'd be happy to work with Nick and others on the local hiring and see if we can find ways to improve that. And John, thank you for remembering the outreach that I did a couple of years ago, and appreciate all that you do. So if I could move to close the public hearing, I would do so.
Moved by Mr.
So, Mayor, I'd move to close the public hearing.
Before you do that, let's see if Dr. Morgan has any comments. Dr. Morgan, you've heard the comments from the dais today, and I want to congratulate you on behalf of the City Council for leading an effort that has resulted in improving or suggesting that we improve and be more communicative with the community as you have and your team have been. And will improve public safety in Pasadena at the same time. Dr. Morgan?
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful for the comments. I would say, you know, this year makes 130 years of Huntington Hospital service to the Pasadena community. And this building is the next logical step for us to continue to provide that compassionate expert care to our citizens. And we're very appreciative of your time. We're very appreciative for the community members. We think it's a better building. And so we're happy to engage that way, but very anxious to move ahead with this project. So I would say that if if that'll get us done, then that would be all I have to comment on.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. We were all wondering how COVID caused you to not have much on your hands. We were wondering how you were spending your time, and now we see this is truly a victory for you to handle all of, and your staff to handle all the issues that COVID presented, and at the same time bring forward a successful project. Mr. Madison is moving to
Move to close the public hearing, Mayor.
Public hearing. Before we do that, Ms. Williams, did you have a comment? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. I believe Mr. Hampton seconded. Somebody second?
I think it was Councilmember Masuda.
Oh, okay, Mr. Masuda. Thank you. Roll call?
Motion to close the public hearing. Councilmember Hampton says yes. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yeah.
Councilmember Madison.
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda.
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas.
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Williams. Vice Mayor Wilson is absent. Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The public hearing is
Mayor,
closed.
with tremendous gratitude to Huntington and all of the community members and the staff who, as Dr. Morgan, I think eloquently stated, made the project better. I would move the staff recommendation.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Just a point of clarification.
Yes,
Does the
Ms.
staff's
Williams.
recommendation include the amended conditions that we saw on the slide?
All but one, I believe.
It does, all the ones on the slide.
Yes.
That's correct.
On the slide, yes.
Okay, on the slide, yes. And so there's a question about amending condition 1 to add the language about the design commission. That was the Pasadena Heritage recommendation. So would your motion, Councilmember Madison, include that amendment or only the ones on the slide?
Mr. Reyes, can you give us your interpretation of the recommendation by Pasadena Heritage?
Mayor, the zoning code requires that this project under the PMC go to the design commission. And the design commission has certain rules and regulations and restraints that are built into the zoning code. And we typically do not restate the zoning code in conditions of approval. It's the PMC is the PMC. So this project will go to the design commission, as all projects do. And the design commission will approve or not approve a project that may or may not result in changes to the floor plan, site plan, and elevations. And so we do not support changes to the condition of approval that we have because we think it's somewhat redundant and it doesn't.
Mayor,
So that's
David is
staff's position.
going in and out.
I'm sorry, I apologize. So the position of yes, there's a condition of approval that requires that any project that gets built be built in substantial conformance to the site plan attached to the staff report, which is what you've seen this evening. And Heritage, Pasadena Heritage would like to have that condition amended to read that it would comply substantially with the site plan that's shown herein and or approved by the design commission. And so again, this is a conditional use permit. The design commission has its own separate entitlement path, conditions of approval, and that would be associated with the design commission. What Heritage is seeking is something that we believe is not required or something that we would normally do at this stage because the zoning code does require the project to go to design review. So again, I think that it causes confusion. It creates this situation that in staff's opinion is not needed. We know this project has to go to design commission. It has to comply with anything the design commission approves and or conditions the project to be.
So just so I'm clear, you're saying that with the request that was made is part of the municipal code already, and so it would be redundant to restate it in the motion. It's already part of the design review process.
Conditions of approval do not contain the PMC code.
Got it.
Well, if it's redundant, then why not include it? I mean, I after sitting on planning commission, I saw many projects that went to design and their hands were tied there. And so I am concerned about this. The lingering concern, there were the tree wells, et cetera, The lingering concern is the design of the building. There's still a lot of community concerns about
The
that.
question is a jurisdictional question, and
Mhm.
so the first question would be, does the design commission currently have jurisdiction to do what is being suggested by West Pasadena? Pasadena Heritage.
Pasadena Heritage hasn't given specifics on how the project design should be changed. But regardless of conditions of approval here, the zoning code sets forth the parameters for design commission review and approval. And just adding a condition of approval cannot supersede the zoning code. The zoning code gives the design commission authority to make certain changes to projects, and other changes can't be made. And the idea that we would add a condition here that would untie the hands of the design commission
I see.
is false. They have to stick to the zoning code parameters that give them authority over projects.
Otherwise, we'll hear from Mr. Jenkins in a different forum, is what you're saying.
Mayor, if I could, I think I heard Councilmember Williams indicate that she can't support the motion because of 4 and 5. So I would ask that we call the question and not sort of have segmentation.
That actually wasn't what I said, Councilmember Madison. Thanks.
I heard Ms. Williams say that she could not make the findings required by 4 and 5, which are essential to my motion. If I misheard, I apologize.
Yeah, you misheard. Thanks.
Okay, so on the question of, so the limited jurisdiction that the design commission has cannot be changed by a condition of approval. Is that stating it differently? Is that what we're
Stated
seeing?
well, Mayor.
Okay.
The zoning code controls.
So the design commission is a limited body or limited jurisdiction body, and we cannot, without changing the code, simply insert a condition of approval that would make that different and give them additional jurisdiction that isn't included.
That's correct.
At this moment in time.
But does the PMC prevent?
Is that correct? I'm looking at the city attorney, and before we move on, is that?
Yes, Mayor, you stated it perfectly. The PMC sets forth the process and the rules and the jurisdiction of a body, and we can't change that through a condition.
We'd have to change the code.
We'd have to change the code. That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Williams?
So is there anything specifically in the code prohibiting the design commission from commenting or amending the site plan or the actual footage?
No, what the zoning code says is that the design commission can't add more restrictive conditions on a project. And it's very clear when you're talking about a housing project that it can't reduce density or height. In this case, with respect to site planning, there could be some changes that are made, but they can't make them more restrictive such that the project couldn't be built as designed by the applicant. So their hands are not tied, but there are restrictions in terms of what changes they can be made. And the code doesn't specifically say what can and can't be done, but site planning changes can be made by the design commission, and it does happen.
Has the question been called because there are certain of us who do need to take a break?
Mr. Kennedy, we're almost there. We're just answering the questions here, and then we'll call the question. So I think the answer, the way forward is to look at this matter going forward, but in terms of the limited jurisdiction of the design commission now, I think we understand that we can't just change it with a condition of approval on the CUP at this moment in time. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we call the roll? Okay, roll call.
So the motion is to approve the staff recommendation with the amendments as captured on that slide that staff reviewed as part of its brief presentation. It was made by Mr. Madison, seconded by Mr. Masuda. Councilmember Hampton?
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson is absent. Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you to Dr. Morgan and all of the members of her team, including the seniors on the team, the senior, and especially thanks to the staff and to the residents who participated and really put the shine on this project that it deserves. We'll all benefit from it, and generations of Pasadenans and beyond will benefit from it as well. So thank you, everyone. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that completes our public agenda, and we have closed session. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? The clerk, and then everyone log on to the closed session. The clerk has one announcement.
The city council will
And I
convene.
have an announcement.
Okay.
Did you want to take Mr.?
Well, Mr. Hampton, go ahead. The clerk's announcement is a procedural matter.
Okay, thank you. At a future public safety meeting, because of our meeting last week, and it seemed like there was always this, and there has always been this, oh, we have to wait for the DA. I would like to invite the DA to speak at a public safety meeting or a city council meeting. Because I'd like to hear it from the DA.
We can certainly
he's the
extend
one holding it up.
invitations.
Say that again?
We can certainly extend invitations to.
Thank you.
Yeah. We may need a larger venue, but we can do that. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. The city council will convene in the virtual meeting to discuss closed session items A, B, C, and D on today's agenda. An opportunity is provided at this time for the public comment on closed session items. There being no public comment requests submitted, I'll just double check to make sure that's. That is still true. There being no public comment requests submitted, the city council will recess into closed session to discuss items A, B, C, and D on today's agenda. Council is asked to log off of this meeting and to connect via your closed session item link. Thank you.
Great. Hi, how are you?
Goodbye.
Come on in.